Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Campus Debate Season 2 by the Debate Association of Kenya. To all the critics, skeptics, and anyone who's ever had an opinion, this is why Campus Debate is so great. It's a group of intellectuals who come together to engage in discourse about anything and everything that is existing in society. Could be things that are affecting you, your neighbor, your family, your friends, or anything altogether, but Campus Debates got you. The biggest thing about it is you get it from a youth perspective, which means university students come together to show you their brilliant minds and help you engage in the biggest conversations that exist in society. My name is Mercy Vugutsa. I will be your host for the show tonight. Here. If this is your first time viewing Campus Debates on Monday at 8 p.m., welcome to our amazing show and thank you for tuning in, and I hope we can engage your mind in all aspects possible and help you continue viewing us every single Monday at 8 p.m. on the show Campus Debates. Now, for this season, things are a bit different. Every team is battling for 6 points on the top, which means they have 2 preliminary rounds to fight for their lives and garner as many points as possible. And so far, we have teams with 6 points and others with only 2 points, but I mean, they are fighting for their lives, which is ideally really good. If they lose out, they have good speaker scores. It's moderately good. They will rise on the tab or not have to fight for their lives if their speaker scores are good. Now, without further ado, I would love to welcome the debaters for tonight. From side proposition, we have Kenyatta University. And from side opposition, we have Mount Kenya University here to represent. I will allow our speakers to introduce themselves and tell us something interesting about them. So with that side proposition.
Hello, my name is John Mwendwa, a student at Kenyatta University, and something interesting about me, I like cartoons.
Hi, my name is Emmanuel Nyongesa from Kenyatta University. Something interesting about me is I am an introvert who is a public speaker and a debater, and I spend more time on Team Urban blog, Wait But Why.
That is amazing. We have someone who loves watching cartoons and another person who is introverted but likes debating and public speaking. The combination actually suits them. Now, from side opposition.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kere Muita. I am a student at Mount Kenya University, Parklands Law Campus. I'm also a spirited human rights activist. And one interesting thing about me is that I like good suits. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Okech Mark from Mount Kenya University, Parklands. I love politics, and in my free time, I'm also a rugby player.
A lawyer who plays rugby and a partner who's enthusiastic about debates and suits. I mean, the combination still suits them. With that, I think they can guarantee an interesting debate for you this episode. Without further ado, I will welcome our judges to introduce themselves and tell us something interesting about them.
Hello, my good people. My name is Biranga Faith from the University of Nairobi. I am not new here. I'm a seasonal judge, and part-time I am a comedian. Yeah. I am a teacher also. Okay. So today I'll be judging this show, and I hope you'll do the best. Though, stop killing women. I'm not seeing a lady there. Stop killing women. I insist. Thank you.
Hello, I am Judge Kimani. I shall be the chair for the round, and I enjoy the critique of commonly held beliefs. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Angela Kiriga. I am a law student at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa, and one interesting thing about me is that I am actually an old soul. I vibe very much to what my 60-year-old father likes to listen to, watch, and read. So yes, I hope to have a wonderful time with you guys.
Now, from the panel, we have an old soul, a critic, and a comedian. How better can a panel be? But oh well, we'll find that out at the continuation of the episode. You have been waiting for hours and hours for us to start this debate, so I will kick it off by reading to you the motion for this round. The motion reads, it has an info slide. Info slide means information that is given prior for you to understand the motion behind it. The info slide reads, in a bid to promote affordable housing in Nairobi, Governor Sakaja has embraced the idea of constructing more high-rise buildings despite sentiments that it goes against sustainable urban development and safety. I'll repeat the info slide. It reads, in a bid to promote affordable housing in Nairobi, Governor Sakaja has embraced the idea of constructing more high-rise buildings despite sentiments that it goes against sustainable urban development and safety. Now, the motion for this round reads, this House regrets the rise of gentrification in Nairobi. This House regrets the rise of gentrification in Nairobi. I know at home you're wondering what exactly is gentrification, but hold your horses. I think said proposition will give you a definition for what gentrification is, so here we go. We welcome side proposition to begin off their argument. Here.
So I start. 3, 2, 1. So gentrification is basically an area which is a low income and is changed by wealthier people moving there and establishing businesses. This is basically people from Karen moving to a place like Donholm and establishing their businesses. And something to note from the info slide, it's that gentrification is happening more and more and it is rising rapidly. We believe that this is bad. And as proposition, we feel like gentrification is something that should not happen at all. We tell you why. We tell you that if rich people want to establish housing, they can go to areas which have no people at all and establish their housing. We also feel like if rich people want to establish housing, they can go to non-habitable cities and establish there. These cities, a perfect example is Konza City, which was initially non-habitable and later was people moved there. We feel like if rich people move to poor neighbors, they will disrupt the social clock of these poor places and these low-income areas. We tell you why. These low-income areas always have certain characteristics, and this means that when business people in these low-income areas are setting up their business, they take into account the consumers, and what does this mean is that they have cheap commodities, and they have cheap commodities so that they can be consumed and they can be affordable they provide commodities that are affordable to the people in the low-income area. So what does rich people coming to these areas, what is the effect of these rich people coming to these low-income areas? The implications. One, we tell you that rich people are people who are willing to spend more. We feel like rich people will expect high quality. That's because they will pay more. And what this means is these poor people and these business people have to change their strategies. One, this means is that they have to use more materials to provide high quality commodities as expected by the rich people. What this means is that there will be inflation and there will be inflated prices. What this means is that the business people will increase the prices of commodities so that because they have increased the materials and they have spent more in making these commodities, which rich people will still buy either way. We feel like this is bad to the poor people because poor people have no at this point, poor people have no access to these goods and services. And what this means is, one, they either starve because they don't have, for instance, tea was going for something like 70 shillings, and now it has to go at a price which is normally in Karen is something like 500 shillings. We feel like this is catastrophic to the poor people because, one, they either have to starve to starve, which is bad to them, or 2, they engage in crime for sustenance, which is bad, for they can be arrested. We also feel like if they engage in crime, this is dangerous to not only to them but also to the rich people who have come to settle in these areas. Why? Because we are putting the lives of these rich people at stake and at risk, because they can be mugged anytime and they can be killed. So, more implication to these poor people is 1, poor people will be forced to move out of these places because they can no longer afford the life that is there. We tell you that this is bad for them because there is transportation costs, rent, the place where they will be moving to, they are likely to pay more for the houses they'll be taking because they are doing so in large numbers. And most importantly, we feel like if these poor people start moving, it is catastrophic to the families because families are being displaced because you are used to living in this place. You have grown into to know certain people, and then right away you are forced to move to another place where you have to start your life over again. And also we feel like if rich people move to these low-income areas, these areas will be termed as profitable areas. What this means is the land rates and rent in these places will go high, which we feel like this is bad to the poor people who are living there because you are living in a house, you are used to paying something like 5,000, and then instantly you start paying something like 15K. We feel like this is something bad to the poor people, and we feel like this will force them to evacuate, and we have already shown you why this is bad. Okay.
Side proposition regrets the rise of gentrification, and with that we welcome side opposition to tell us whether they regret or they don't. Here.
Good evening. I'm Kerry from side opposition, and I'm proud to vehemently oppose and refute this motion. May I first begin by rebutting the points that have been put forward by the proposition team. 1, the proposition has just told this House that the first statement they actually said is the negativity of gentrification. And so how negative is gentrification? Population increases day in, day out. The same population that we had 10 years ago is not what we had now. But the same land size, the same land area we had in Kenya 10 years ago is still the same land area that we have now. Population is increasing, land is not. You cannot stop urbanization. The world is evolving, the population is increasing, and therefore you must come up with very logic reasons as to how on earth you think urbanization can be stopped, and how on earth you think you can balance the increasing population vis-a-vis the land area that is not increasing. To refute that claim, urbanization cannot be stopped, and therefore gentrification must continue. The only thing that this House should concern itself with is the mitigation factors of gentrification. Because we are not going to stop gentrification, we should only be interested in the mitigation factors, which I will give out clearly. The second thing that they said is how gentrification contributes to high poverty levels. Gentrification, I wonder how it contributes to high poverty levels myself, because the first thing that gentrification does is to cause increased employment. Even when the government was introducing the affordable housing program, the first reason the government said was to increase employment opportunity. And just to go beyond that, because employment opportunity goes beyond just building houses. Employment opportunities extends to investments. When these houses have been completed, investors come in to open their businesses there. This is more opportunities that actually create employment. I wonder how the proportionality of employment relating to poverty, how would employment, actually creation of employment and increase in investments contribute to unemployment? Again, that is absurd. What, again, they have said about displacement is on gentrification leading to displacement. This, again, can be solved. We are looking also at the mitigation factors. You cannot paint gentrification to be negative in its entirety, because the problem of displacement is solved by tenants' rights tenants' rights and protection. Tenants' rights and protection is something that has worked all over the world, and that is why the government of Kenya keeps on giving the example of Singapore. Not that alone. The Mutable Welfare case versus the Kenya Airports Authority. The court clearly mandates, the court clearly dictates that whoever evicts residents must actually, it's their responsibility to have them resettled. So the Mutable Welfare case brings in the issue of structural interdicts, that you must, if you evict residents from an area, then it is your duty actually to report to court and explain what steps have you taken towards having these residents resettled and living a dignified life. So that one is entirely solved by our legal framework. It is not a point in issue. So the first point I'm going to issue is on property value increase in regards to gentrification. When houses are built, the place gets urbanized. An area is urbanized when more affordable housing units are built and more story buildings. And this actually increases the value for property. An urbanized place has more property value as compared to a place that is not fully developed or is not as urban, is not urban as such. For which reason, when property value increases, even the residents, the local residents of that area themselves, their property value also appreciate. That explains why it is much expensive to buy land in parklands as compared to somewhere like Rongai or any other place. It is because, I'll take your POI in a few. The second point I'm giving is on improved safety and security. When urbanization takes place and a lot of buildings are built and it draws in investors. A place like Westgate Tech instance, a lot of story buildings have been built. It has attracted investors, for which reason the place is actually secure because there's a lot of security beefed up to protect the property and the investments thereof. The third point I'm going to explain is on the importance of preservation of historical and architectural heritage. It is very important for us to preserve our heritage. And this explains why the place Karen is actually named after a British woman. We cannot just sweep away history. If we allow gentrification to take place, we are preserving the authenticity of our identity, which is very actually crucial in educating and informing our generation. Because it is important, we cannot actually forge a way forward of where we are going, but understanding in the first place where we are from. The third point is the fourth point is on social mobility and creation of opportunity. Social mobility, specifically in regards to upward mobility. I have clearly explained on how gentrification contributes to employment opportunities and consequently resulting to upward mobility. And the last thing I'm going to speak about is on cultural exchange, which allows gentrification allows diverse communities to live together and actually promote peaceful coexistence, which is actually very important towards nation building. I rest my case.
The debaters have told you that gentrification ideally means that rich people move to low-income areas, create businesses, and ideally projects in that space to benefit either the rich people or the poor people. I think that's up to the debaters to tell us. You've understood what gentrification is. Welcome back to the continuation of this amazing episodes with KU and MKU trying to battle for their lives with the idea of gentrification existing in Nairobi, to be specific. Now, What has exactly happened in the opening of this debate? Side proposition have told us that ideally, if we have gentrification, we're going to dislocate these poor people who habitate those areas, and it's going to be bad for those people to exist there. But side opposition have told us that you cannot stop urbanization, so because of that, let's embrace gentrification. It might actually benefit the people that are in those areas. I think I've not yet been swayed by either team, so we'll give them an opportunity to continue their arguments with side proposition, beginning with a continuation of their argument. Here.
Starting in 3, 2, 1. Esteemed judges, audience, and people at home, I think you should nominate side proposition for the Nobel Peace Prize, because what we are doing in this debate essentially is what the Justice League should do: defend the defenseless. Batman, I'm Superman, side proposition wins this debate. We tell side opposition that when there's an influx of people moving to an area, especially people who are different from the people who already exist in that area, what tends to happen is that there tends to be a change in culture within that area. What happens with gentrification is richer people moving into neighborhoods which are of lower income as compared to them. What they do when they move into those areas is essentially they change the culture within that area. The reason they change the culture, the reason they are able to change the culture within that area is simply because they are richer than the people who stay there. Because they are richer than the people who stay there, the existing market has an incentive to cater to their needs, because they can spend more and because they can be able to bring more profits to the market, meaning they are likely to shift the market to favor them as compared to the little guy that does not have the same power within status quo. The problem with this is that the people who live within that area are used to that market, and that market caters to their needs. When you change the market to cater to people who are wealthier and more powerful than them, it means they cannot be able to exist within that market because it becomes unaffordable to them. They say that, they don't promote poverty because, one, they are giving jobs to people. Even if you are giving jobs to people, it's inconsequential because the money they get, they cannot be able to use it because the goods that are being provided to them have higher prices to them. That means if you are giving them 500, but the goods within that market are 1,000, that 500 is useless to them, and the job you created is as good as nothing because it does nothing to change their lives in general. They say that we argue that gentrification promotes poverty levels. We are not saying it promotes poverty levels. These people are already poor to begin with. What gentrification does is that it changes the market such that it does not favor the people who are poor within that area, meaning they can no longer be able to access the goods within that market, which means they are unable to exist within that area. What happens is, as my partner tells you, it's either you starve, it's either you become a criminal, or it's either you move out of that area. All of the three options are bad for those people. None is good for them. They say that, and they give a couple of benefits for why urbanization is good. But before that, they say population is increasing, land is not increasing. We don't refute that, but we don't see why it's necessarily something that should be important in this debate. Because even if population is increasing, we are not settled at every corner of Kenya. That is to say, there are still a lot of uninhabited places within Kenya. Rich people can always go to those places. My partner tells you, you can always start another Konza city. And they can do this because they have all the money in the world. They can be able to afford this. This does not come at a cost to them. They can do it. We have a lot of uninhabited land in Kenya. They can move there. They don't need to move to the poor neighborhoods, because when they do, they shift the markets in those neighborhoods to not favor the people that live there to begin with. But beyond that, if they have to live within Nairobi, they can always go to places within Nairobi that don't have people. They don't necessarily have to move to poor neighborhoods, because when they do so, they bring about the harms that it talks about. We think then their benefits can largely be actualized within our world, just not within poor areas. They can go to other areas and they will still have the same benefits. They will still have social mobility, they will still have investors increasing, they will still have authenticity and increase in value of property without moving into poor areas. But beyond that, a lot of the benefits they are talking about don't favor the people within those poor areas, because this is the idea. Even if property value increases, most poor people living there don't own those properties, so it's not good for them anyway, it's good for the rich people. But beyond that, investors increasing in those areas are not good for them, because when investors increase, it means you necessarily create another Karen. It means that place becomes more profitable with what it tells you. Necessarily, it just means land within that area becomes more expensive, buildings within that area becomes more expensive, rent within that area becomes more expensive. You cannot afford to live there anymore, you have to move. Problem is, they are poor to begin with. Not only are you like destabilizing their families, but more than that, they cannot even be able to afford to move because they are poor people. They cannot just go and start their lives all over again, because it means probably building other houses, it probably means moving into newer houses, which is bad for them. Side proposition defends the poor guy, and we say we can achieve their benefits anyway. They crush the poor guy and they say we don't care about the poor guy, we care about urbanization. Vote side proposition.
Side proposition has finalized their arguments, and with that we welcome side opposition to finalize theirs as well.
For avoidance of doubt, my name is o1r, and I'll begin with a question. What is the difference between the price of bread in Nairobi and the price of bread in Kibera? The issue about employment brings in accordance to what Amartya Sen said. In order for one to enjoy life, you have to enjoy all rights. The right to affordable housing has been addressed as an MDG, SDG, and among the Big Four agenda, which is why even in Sakaja's bid to allow high-rise buildings, one question arises: sustainable urban development. The proposition have brought the issue of these people being relocated to other areas, but we are talking about sustainable urban development. We are talking about development of the urban areas. Secondly, the opposition have clearly proved that these people are not only just being displaced, but there is law to it that if you are being displaced, the government is responsible to settle you somewhere else. Also, there are mitigation policies that are there. One is the rent control policy, whereby it has been implemented in New York, and over 1 million people, this is said practice that has worked, have been able to enjoy affordable rent. In as much as these structures are being erected, there are policies to ensure that these structures become conducive for these people. In matters sustainable urban development, there is a 4-part criteria that ought to be met. One is urban planning. Secondly, public transportation. Green building practices. Green building practices means the buildings that are supposed to be erected are buildings that also have to be in line with the climate change issue that has been going on. Not buildings that will be able to even destroy the climate. You realize that the outdated buildings, they have issues with climate, they're not in line with the climate. This is to which that if this is brought in board, climate is also considered. Another issue that was brought in board is the issue of culture. We aver that that when this is placed in board, it provides for cultural diversity, which means that for the first time, the rich will be able to settle with the poor, and cultural diversities ought to be met. Look at a place like Karen, whereby now better schools are there, better health facilities are there due to cultural diversity. When you go to Karen, people from both first lane life and people who are struggling, both of them live there. One is in help of the other, and it brings the mode of cultural diversity that we need. It is with no iota of doubt that society must have the poor and the rich, but the definition of the poor and the rich brings the difference. This is to it that a poor man in Washington, D.C. could be the richest in Nairobi, Kenya. So bringing the situation up, scaling up due to this urbanization makes the situation better even for the poor man and the rich man. Then there's the establishment of community ownership programs. This is to which that this policy provides a situation whereby people can own property communally. When people own property communally, it makes ownership of property to become affordable and cheaper. This is in practices such as condominiums, whereby a high-rise building is erected, different people own different floors, different people own different rooms. This is to which that in as much as land was acquired in a certain price, we get to have an eternal profitable accommodation. Then another mitigation that is being raised by the opposition is tenant protection. Just a minute. Tenant protection. Tenants guided by the justice care eviction laws, just cause eviction laws. This is to wit that there is no one, according to the just cause eviction laws, who can be removed forcefully from their land. This point that they are being removed from their land and relocated to a better place is being done in accordance to the law. I'll take your PI.
Yeah, even if the government will compensate you if you're evacuated, that only happens if you're evacuated. If you move on your own because that place is no longer affordable, they will not be able to refund you because you moved on your own.
Appreciations, and I'd like to aver that let us tie ourselves to the topic. This is to wit that the topic says, in order for this to happen, you have to be evacuated. This topic does not suffice where on your own volition, you've moved. That is your personal decision. When the government evacuates you, it is when the government is responsible in compensating you. But when you move on your own volition, then you take your own responsibility. Another feather to the opposition's cap includes economic growth. When these buildings are raised, as aforementioned, better schools are there, better health care facilities, and hence jobs are being created, infrastructure is being developed, there is cultural exchange and cultural diversity, and also there is historical development. This is to wit that this system does not only involve erecting of new buildings, it also involves betterment of the current buildings. This is to wit that a building like Archives, which sits at the heart of town, if it gets old, the possibility of it being made better by telling people we can reimburse you if we move you in order to make our archives better. This is to wit that as years go by, history also grows. There'll be need for expansion of archives, and there'll be need for us to keep our history and our heritage. Then another thing is public safety. It is with no doubt that even in the times that we have national strikes and national outcries, areas like Runda, areas like Lavington, areas like Current don't experience such. This is to mean that if we have this growth, this means that even more security is being beefed. Considering that I've run faster than my time, the opposition rests. Thank you.
I think we can all attest to the fact that Campus Debates is indeed a collection of intelligent minds, because right now, I can assure you, we have learned what gentrification means, whether it's good or bad for society, because that's what proposition and opposition have argued to us. I think the biggest clash that existed between the two teams is who exactly benefits the poor people in society and by what means. But before we respond to that from the judges, we will take a short Welcome back, and thank you for staying put to continue with us in this show and this episode of Campus Debates. We have come to the almost close of this debate, and I will summarize to you what happened in the first half of the debate. Side proposition, who are ideally our Kenyan version of Batman, they tell us that we think that this particular gentrification would have the poor people in these spaces because they'd have to relocate otherwise based on the financial capacity that they have. And they think that rich people will now take over spaces that low-income areas have for these poor people. And that's necessarily bad because they continue to be vulnerable people. But side opposition tells you the only way to benefit these poor people is to have this particular gentrification existing in the low-rise areas, because ideally there are mitigation policies that exist to protect them from harm that could exist in those spaces. I don't know whether they swayed you or not. I don't even know whether you agree that gentrification is good or bad, but I think the judges share those sentiments, and because of that, they'll be asking a question each for the sides to defend themselves further.
My question is to Team Proposition. If you say that the rich moving into the low-income areas will lead to a negative impact to them, how else do you suggest that these low-income areas improve and meet the standard that is required and not the low standard that they exist in?
Okay, I hope you're ready. Allow me quote Vugutsa's words. Sakaja has embraced the idea of like more higher buildings in Nairobi. In this context, gentrification was relative. Not that I'm like not appreciating your work, but it was nice. But you could have focused on our city, Nairobi. I want you people to tell us something about the house levy. And don't you feel like the rich, the poor are manipulating the rich? Don't answer that one. Prove to Kenyans how gentrification will boost our economy. Thank you.
Will the responses from side proposition or opposition be enough to sway the judges? I think I'll leave that to the debaters. With that, welcome proposition to have a minute to fight for their lives. Here.
The question that was asked is, how do we improve low quality areas? We think poor people within those areas are either poor because they are not employed, or probably they are paid very poorly within the jobs which they have. So we think the trick is to balance, where you provide those jobs or increase their salaries, but at the same time you have to ensure that their quality of life within the areas they live does not increase. Because if you give them jobs or you increase their salaries, but then you increase their standards of living, you cancel out the two and it becomes a zero-sum game where there's no benefit for them. So the government has to find a way where they don't increase their living standards, but somehow increase their salaries and their jobs.
The government will be able to earn revenue through gentrification. This is because when the gentrification happens, better tax is being earned by the government. And secondly, gentrification also attracts investors, which is a proper way of the government earning its, of course, its revenue and making the economy better. If the government is earning better revenues, it means also it settles the equilibrium of economy. Lastly, there is improvement of social amenities, which makes the economy better. Social amenities, which it is vast to include infrastructure and a better transition of the government. If there is proper gentrification, it means there is also much better collaboration between even the country and other countries. The opposition rests their case.
They have debated for approximately 6 minutes each. I don't know if it's been enough to sway you to either side, but oh well, I think the judges will tell us their call. The biggest question now becomes, do you think gentrification will benefit those who are poor, or does the greater good of the state supersede the vulnerable people that exist in those spaces? Because ideally, from side opposition, they tell you the state will earn money, and because of that, there'll be a trickle-down effect. So do you think the state having money is better compared to the poor people having capacities for them to even exist in those spaces? Feel free to engage with us on X at KTN Home with the hashtag Campus Debates, or message us on WhatsApp with the number 0759434389, 0759434389. With that, I think we are ready to welcome the adjudication panel, the judges ideally, to tell us who has won this round and who has lost. Here.
I thank you, Vogutsa. So after heavy deliberation with my panelists, we were able to reach a call because we think the work done by either team was quite convincing. So this was a win on a very thin margin. After deliberation, we gave the win to the team in proposition. This was due to several clashes. A discussion about an actor, i.e. the person involved, this group of individuals in lower economic classes, and their vulnerability, and the fact that the harms that they talk about are categorized as unnecessary, because there's a question of exclusivity. Is it possible for these individuals who are classified as rich able to invest in other places Are they able to move to other places and make this kind of money? And as the debate ended, this seemed to be possible, and opposition had no reply to this. Opposition were unable to answer the question of insufficiency of capital to the extent that you are not able to live where you work. That even if you probably work in Karen, you cannot afford the housing rent there. And so we were persuaded by this kind of analysis. And further, and last of all, is that capital controls all, that even the traditions and the culture will follow the capital and not those without. Thank you.
You have heard it from the judges themselves. Side proposition has been able to carry the day, and with that, they've won for themselves 3 amazing points on the tabulation score. And I think for them now, it means they have 6 points so far, so they don't have to fight for their lives in the knockout rounds. I think that's a what's it called? A notion to Sakaja that he should stop the high-rise movements in Nairobi, but I mean, I'm just a student. I cannot comment on the same. Now, with that, I think Mount Kenya University has also been able to gather 1 point for themselves and hopefully good speaker scores, which means they might not have to fight for their lives in the knockout rounds that will be upcoming. And I think we've noticed a pattern. For the latest few episodes, side proposition has been carrying the day, and I think we need a change of vibes. Maybe next week, when we are watching the episode, side opposition might carry the day. We will only know when you join us in the next episode. With that, engage with us on X at KTN Home with the hashtag Campus Debates, or message us on WhatsApp with the number 0759434389. We promise we will not leave you on red, no matter how hard we try. Now, we have come to the end of this Campus Debates episode. Thank you so much for tolerating us for an hour. Thank you for engaging with us on X and at the same time on WhatsApp. And thank you so much for engaging with us on the motion of gentrification. The motion for this episode was, this House regrets the rise of gentrification as a whole. I think proposition swayed you, but with that, we'll see you next week on Monday at 8 p.m. My name is Mercy Vugutsa, your host for Campus Debates.